What happens when we die?
That's an easy question. I know that's the hard question, but that's really the easy question. And first, let me tell you how I know, because how do you know what happens when you die? Well, I know from several approaches. One, it's easy to do a mind-to-mind connection with somebody and then just follow along with them. So you see, hear, smell, and taste what they see, hear, smell, and taste. And it's just a mind-to-mind connection. What was it? Spock used to do that with the fingers on the head, right? He'd do a mind meld. Well, it's kind of like that, but not quite so showy.
You're tapping into somebody else.
Yeah, you attach it into somebody else's mind.
Yeah.
So you're just an observer. You're sitting there observing what they're doing.
Right.
And I've done that 2 or 3 times with people as they died.
Whoa.
And you can just attach to them, and then you can go with them and see where it goes. And then you go through.
You were there while they died.
Yeah. You just attach to their consciousness. It's what you're attaching to, their consciousness. The body dies, the consciousness doesn't. So when they die, you're with their consciousness, and you can follow that process that they go through. And that's one way that I learned. The other way was that a long, long time ago, the larger conscious system gave me a job in the virtual reality frame I call the transition reality. And that's where you end up after your avatar dies. And it's there for a transition. And I was there just to learn what it was like. I was like a Walmart greeter. The people would die and they would come there and I would say, come off this way. It's fine. Everything's going to be all right. And I was doing that for a while, and I got around to the various places and stations. And so I spent probably, months where every night I had entities come to me when I was very young, like 7 years old. They taught me how to go out of body, and they taught me a lot of other things too, how to get around in the non-physical. So I had all that happen to me at a young age. And I had, non-physical friends forever. And I still do. Some of the ones I interacted with when I was 7, I still interact with them. So that's been a constant. But anyway, the system sent me to this transition reality so that I would understand what happens when you die. And I worked there for probably a month. Every night I'd lie down, and as soon as I hit the bed and shut my eyes, I was gone, and I was there. And I did that every night until I learned everything that was there. So I've seen it from the death and the process and the transition, and then I've seen it from the other side where that transition comes to the transition reality and goes through the process of finding another avatar and going back
so
for
it's,
another
it's sort of
experience.
like the idea of reincarnation. So our consciousness gets shuttled into another avatar.
Yeah.
And born, like when a baby is born, does it enter?
Doesn't have to be when it's born. It can be, mostly it is before. Once the baby has sensory organs, it can see, it can hear, it can smell, it can taste, then that's when a consciousness can go there and see, hear, smell, and taste those things from those sensory organs. It can like log on to that because there's sensory data there to process. So that way the consciousness can hear the parents' voices, can hear music being played, can experience some, of what's coming, can pick up, it's intuitive, can pick up the feelings and the kind of ambience of the space that it's in. So there's a lot of things that it can do there. It gets a sense of feeling, a sense of space. It can punch mom in the belly, and do things that are fun. So yes, it often comes in before birth, just when it has sensory stuff. Before there's any sensory, there's no point. There's no input data. There's no data stream. So once there's a data stream, it can log on to that data stream.
Wow.
Now, sometimes it comes and logs on even after birth. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes something happens. There's some, one case I had that a friend of mine had a family member who lived somewhere not around me or her. And they had a baby born with a brain cancer. So the baby was born, and they detected, I'm not sure how they detected, maybe they detected it in the ultrasound or something. It had some kind of lump in the brain that it shouldn't have had. So then when it was born, they examined that and found that it was some sort of a brain cancer. And when they discovered that, the entity that was going to be the consciousness logged onto that changed its mind and said, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that experience. I don't want to be logged on to an infant with a brain cancer. Not what I had in mind. So they backed out. And the system was looking for somebody to pick that up. And I got invited in, well, I was invited by this friend to see what I could do. So I went to the babe, I saw the brain cancer, and I healed the brain cancer. And the brain cancer then disappeared. And another entity came, wasn't the first entity, but another entity came that was willing to take that on. And then the healing took place after that other entity came. And so it actually got a second, you want to call it consciousness, spirit, soul, whatever you want to call it. So the first one got replaced because it didn't back out. Now, that brings up a point is free will does not get run over. If you say no, if they say, well, do you want to take this body? You can say no, and they won't force you. You're not forced to do anything.
How do you know that happened? Like, how do you know that this entity entered the baby and then did a U-turn and left, and then something else came in?
Because when I log on, I look at the whole situation. When I get into it, I get there and I see what's going on, what happened. Mm-hmm. And I talk to the entity that was the baby then. I talked to that entity, that consciousness, and that consciousness was up in a whip because it didn't want that. And then I kind of asked the system, what do you want to do here? There seems to be a problem. And the system said, give me a moment. And I was, so I work all that out. Like if you came and told me that, my mother is ill, can I help? Don't just go and help with that problem. I have to go connect with your mother, find out what the problem is, why the problem is, where did it come from, why is she having that problem? And then I can decide whether I should heal it or not, because sometimes the problems people have are part of their learning experience. They need to have those problems. It gives them choices to have. So sometimes it's because they've had a lifetime of anger and stuff, and it's built up, negative stuff in the body is now expressing all that anger in terms of a cancer. Yeah. In which case, you don't mess with it. You say, no, I'll let that one be. It's what they need to experience. They need to experience the consequences of the way they've been. But other times I'll find out that, it's just, yes, this would be a good candidate to heal. That's a good idea. So I have to connect with everything before I decide what it is I'm going to do about it. And when I connected with this entity that was the consciousness for that baby, I found that it didn't want to be there. It didn't want to have a kind of a experience. So then they got somebody else, and I did the healing, and the cancer went away, and that little person is now probably an adult.
How do the doctors react to you healing the cancer?
They react to it like it's a miracle. So they saw it. They had tested it. It was cancer. They didn't know that before. They did a biopsy probably. And it just went away. Cancer does that sometimes.
Wow.
So, that was some years back. But this person, like I say, it was a family member of a good friend of mine. So they kept getting updates on it. So I was getting the updates on what was happening and what was going on.
When's the last time you had contact with this person, that baby who is probably now an
I never actually had physical contact with him.
Uh-huh.
And after I did the healing, I butted out, I let it go. So It worked on its own way. But I did get a sense. I did talk to the entity that was coming in. And I told my friend that the entity coming in is really a high-quality entity. It's one that didn't mind taking a risk of starting out with a brain cancer or whatever that might mean.
Wow.
Living the first bunch of years of your life in surgeries or, whatever else it might mean, or dying early.
Yeah.
So I told her what the kind of entity that it would be, and it turned out that was the kind of entity it was. So she reported back to me and said, yeah, she's really a special kid. So I've been doing these things all my life. It sounds like a wow, but it's kind of a everyday thing that I do, and I don't any longer have to go into a meditation state or do anything. Just do it. It's either I can tell you I never meditate anymore, or I can tell you I live in a meditation state. They're both equivalent. It's both the same thing.